What's wavy? I'm your host MoonVibes, and this is Fantasy Vibes. And on this episode, we're going to get into some reactions that I have and takeaways from the week 2 of the NFL season. It's gonna be a quicker video. I'm gonna give it to you rapid fire. But before we do, make sure you click that like button, hit the thumbs up, share with somebody that you love, and consider subscribing to the channel for more fantasy football content, more insight, and that you never miss an episode of Fantasy Vibes ever because you're a subscriber. And to everybody that does subscribe, I appreciate you. Welcome to the club, and it's a privilege and an honor to be able to give you this fantasy football insight and content. So let's get straight into it. This episode is called Vibestradamus. I'm going to be talking about some takeaways that you need to look at and consider for this week of the NFL season for week 2, heading into week 3. Let's get started. You need to add wide receiver Rondell Moore to your team. He had a 77-yard highlight touchdown pass, and if you look at the highlights, you're like, oh my gosh, like he just went crazy. Kyler Murray extended the play. He went nuclear. He took off, and he got busy. But what I need to mention is that he had 8 targets, which led the team, even over to DeAndre Hopkins and Max Williams. He had 7 receptions. He had 114 receiving yards. This is important. And all while taking snaps away from Christian Kirk, who last week we were talking about we need to trade for Christian Kirk. We need to sell Christian Kirk. Listen, I know it's too early to trust Rondell Moore right now, but at the same time, you need to understand that the Arizona Cardinals clearly want to get him the ball. And as this progresses over the season, I want to be a part and I want to have a share of Rondell Moore, and you should too. Add Rondell Moore to your lineups and to your teams this week. Coming up next, you need to sell high on Buccaneers tight end Rob Gronkowski. I now believe Tom Brady when he said that Gronk is playing the best that he's ever seen. I didn't believe it when he first came out and said that report. I thought, oh man, that's just Brady being Brady. But look, the future Hall of Famer tight end had his 2 touchdowns in the 3rd straight game. Listen, he's honestly one of the best late round fantasy picks that you could ever hope for to date right now. And I understand there's a lot of concern that, okay, is he going to be able to keep up with this? Because they played the Dallas Cowboys defense in week 1. They played the Atlanta Falcons defense in week 2. Can he keep this up? Well, to help encourage you, Gronk, he ran a route on 25 of the Buccaneers' 40 pass plays this past week. 25 out of 40. And he played every snap week 1 against the Bucs. Routes run is important for a tight end. It's extremely important. And at this point, his value is not going to be higher. So I would sell high on Rob Gronkowski. Coming up next, let's talk about another tight end. I'm not starting Dallas Goedert. I'm not. He's not consistent enough for me. And I understand the matchup was brutal against the 49ers, who are very good against tight ends. But I just don't trust it. A lot of people started Dallas Goedert. I know that he was starting in at least about 50% of ESPN leagues. But you might need to come to the realization that he's not every week in and week out starting caliber fantasy tight end for you. Gronk, to me, is. Darren Waller, to me, is. Travis Kelce, is. TJ Hawkinson, is. Dallas Goedert, no. Mike Gesicki, no. Kyle Pitts right now, no. Like, I'm not doing it. So Dallas Goedert is a tight end that I'm not considering starting on a week-to-week basis for you. Coming up next, we got Raiders wide receiver Henry Ruggs III. Listen, he had a 61-yard touchdown pass in the 4th quarter that helped secure the Raiders a victory, and his numbers look good after that. But you might say, well, does that necessarily equal fantasy value moving forward, Moon? Well, what if I told you that the Raiders have passed the ball, have more passing yards than any other team in the National Football League? Derek Carr is like almost 150 yards over Kyler Murray, and he is leading the MVP surge right now. We also got to put respect on Derek Carr. We also have to understand that Henry Ruggs had 12 targets this past week. He was tied this past week with Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow, and he is a perfect complement in this offense. You need to pick him up, and you need to sell high on him. Sell high on Henry Ruggs. Don't sell low. Sell high. Coming up next, you need to stand firm and stay locked on Brandon Ayuk. I understand a lot of people have been coming out and saying, well, he's droppable in redraft, and I'm trading him in Dynasty and all this other thing because of the situation with Kyle Shanahan and the snap percentages, and does he want to trust Trent Sherfield and all of this. But let's just be honest. Sherfield had 1 catch. Brandon Ayuk had 1 catch. Both of them did. Brandon Ayuk, I'm not giving up on him yet. I'm standing pat, and I feel like you should stand pat too, because why? It's all about progression. He had a progressive sign this week when he started for week 2, after being not really in the rotation a lot for week 1. That is increased progress. We gotta look at that and pay attention to it. I'm staying firm on Brandon Ayuk. Coming up next, you need to buy low on Austin Eckler. Don't waste no time. Look, let's just keep it a buck. There's very few running backs that have high snap share, that have high target share, and have high goal line carries. He's received all the goal line carries in the first week, and he ran in a 2-point conversion, so they seem to trust him in the goal line. But this past week, he had a solid game. I mean, week 1 was like kind of like, whoa, he didn't have no targets. This past week, he had his fair share of targets. And based on how the Chargers use him, he's definitely benefiting from the fact that the offensive line for the Chargers seemed to be better. I understand Dallas, they definitely put the big boy pants on and came to play against the Chargers. And the Chargers just deal with a lot of penalties. It's just so annoying. They had like 1 million penalties. It doesn't make any sense. But Austin Eckler is a player that I'm definitely buying low on. I have to start Mike Williams every single week, week in and week out. It doesn't make sense. It is ridiculous. Speaking of the Chargers' improved offensive line, he's one of the biggest beneficiaries from it, because he has more time to throw. Justin Herbert has more time to throw to his wide receivers, so he should be in your fantasy starting lineups without even a question. You don't even have to think about it. This past week, he led the team in targets with 10. He had the best statistical day of all the Chargers wide receivers. He had 7 catches for 91 yards and a sweet touchdown. And then we talk about him being in a contract year. He's playing for a contract. So I'm starting Chargers wide receiver Mike Williams every week in and week out. It's not even a question about it. Coming up next, and probably getting to the back end of this, Cowboys running back Tony Pollard. He had 16 touches for over 100 yards rushing on 75 to 35 snap share percentage. Tony Pollard had 35%, Zeke had 75%. In week 1, it was close to like 80 to 20, 80 to 15, something like that. And let's just be honest, call a spade a spade. Tony Pollard is the Cowboys' highest scoring fantasy running back for the 2nd straight week. Now, this is not trying to make you panic on Zeke, but it's just showcasing to you that Tony Pollard is starting to have standalone value in fantasy football. And slowly but surely, it seems like Kellen Moore and his offense look like they need to get both of these running backs involved. Coming up next, you need to start and pick up Bears quarterback Justin Fields. It's obvious. I don't have to make it even more complicated. Andy Dalton hurt his leg on a non-contact play. Justin Fields came in, took over. He had 60 yards, 1 interception, 31 rushing yards. And it was a lot to be encouraged about, especially since he ran the ball 10 times and I don't think any of them were quarterback design runs. He's only rostered in half of your leagues, and he should be a top waiver wire prospect, and he has the potential to be a QB1 and possible top 8 quarterback just on rushing upside alone. Last but not least, we need to monitor this whole situation with the running backs for the 49ers. Like, week 1 ended kind of similar to how week 2 did. Elijah Mitchell was the primary 1st and 2nd down back, and Jermichael Hasty was the primary 3rd down back. Now, Mitchell, he ended up suffering a shoulder injury, but he returned to the game. And Jermichael Hasty ended up suffering an ankle injury. Now, Chase Sermon was active for the game, but on his first carry, he ended up fumbling and he had a head injury on the first snap. That's like a horrible way to start your career. That's probably the worst way that you could start your career. Now, if Mitchell is healthy, he should be like we're anticipating him being next week, then it's still his job to lose. But we have to also understand that it's possible that the 49ers could activate Kerryon Johnson to take on the 3rd down role with Jermichael Hasty's injuries, if Jermichael Hasty's injury is serious. But that's the reason why we need to monitor this 49ers backfield and the injuries that they have, though. Those are some of the takeaways that I have for week 2 of the NFL season. I'm Vibestradamus, a.k.a. MoonVibes, and this is Fantasy Vibes. If you're loving this content, make sure you hit the like button, share with somebody that you love, and consider subscribing to the channel for more uploads, more content, more fantasy insight, and more fantasy vibes.